There are moments when you stare at the bottle, the screen, the habit that's gripped you tighter than any chain, and you whisper to yourself, "Why can't I stop?" You've read the books, attended the meetings, sworn to the mirror 1,000 times, this is the last. But the pull returns, silent and relentless, like a tide you can't outrun. And in that despair, a deeper ache surfaces. Not just the craving, but the question, who am I without this? Carl Jung once revealed that addiction isn't merely a flaw of will or a chemical snare. It's the soul's desperate cry for wholeness, a symptom of an inner fracture we've buried so deep we mistake it for fate. He called it the retreat into the unconscious, a flight from the unhealed parts of ourselves we dare not face. But here's the unyielding truth. Jung uncovered you can't conquer addiction until you confront the shadow it conceals, the inner deception that whispers, "This is all you'll ever be." This video isn't a quick fix or a list of rules. It's a map through the fog, drawn from Jung's wisdom on the psyche's hidden chambers. We'll explore the 7 veiled truths that guard the path to liberation, not through sheer force, but through the quiet revolution of seeing yourself whole. Persist to the end, for the hardest revelation is the one that sets you free. Addiction isn't your enemy, it's the mirror you've avoided too long. Are you ready to gaze into it? Number 1, the illusion of control. The first lie we tell ourselves. The initial veiled truth of addiction is the grand deception we all embrace, control. You convince yourself, I can handle this. It's just a drink, a hit, a scroll, nothing more, but deep down you sense the lie. Addiction thrives not on the substance or the act, but on the illusion that you can master it alone without surrendering to the chaos it reveals. Carl Jung saw this as the ego's final stand, the surface self clinging to the throne while the unconscious floods the gates. He wrote, in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, the shadow is the part of ourselves we refuse to acknowledge, and addiction is its throne. When you chase control, you're not battling the habit. You're battling the truth it exposes, that beneath the polished exterior lies a vulnerability you've armored against since childhood. Perhaps it was the parent whose love felt conditional, the failure that scarred, deeper than you admit, or the unspoken grief that whispers, you're not enough. Addiction becomes the false sovereign, promising dominion over pain while chaining you to its whim. Jung called this the possession by the unconscious, where the ego, terrified of dissolution, doubles down on the very force devouring it. Consider the story of a man I once counseled through Jungian analysis. He was a high-achieving executive, the kind who commanded boardrooms with effortless poise. But each evening, after the applause faded, he'd retreat to whiskey, convinced he deserved it for his triumphs. I control it, he'd insist, tallying drinks like victories. Yet, as sessions deepened, we uncovered the fracture. A childhood where praise was rationed, leaving him perpetually proving his worth. The whiskey wasn't escape. It was the echo of that boy, still auditioning for approval. Jung would say his addiction wasn't the villain, it was the symptom. A cry from the shadow demanding, see me, or I'll consume you. The lie of control keeps you circling the same abyss, each last time a deeper dive. Jung warned that true healing demands active imagination, not suppression, but descent. Face the illusion by journaling nightly. What does this craving guard? What fear does it shield? No judgment, just witness. Over weeks, patterns emerge, not as enemies, but as exiles seeking reintegration. One client, after months, wrote, "The drink wasn't for pleasure, it was for the silence I couldn't bear." That admission cracked the facade. Control isn't seized, it's surrendered, trading the ego's crown for the self's quiet reign. If you're ensnared in this cycle, omit in the comments, "I see the lie." because naming it is the first fracture in the illusion. Number 2, the shadow's seduction, the unconscious bargain. The second veiled truth is the shadow's seduction. The unspoken pact addiction forges with your unacknowledged self. Jung described the shadow as the thing a person has no wish to be, the repository of all we've exiled, rage, shame, the unlovable fragments we deem too dark for light. Addiction isn't chaos, it's covenant, a Faustian trade where the substance promises oblivion from the shadow's gaze in exchange for your sovereignty. Just one more, it murmurs, and the pain sleeps. But Jung knew the bargain's cost. Each indulgence strengthens the shadow's throne until it rules not as guest, but tyrant. This seduction blooms in denial's soil. You rationalize, it's not that bad, others have it worse. Or, I deserve this after everything. These are the shadow's alibis, veiling the deeper wound, the belief that without the crutch, you're intolerable. Jung termed this enantiodromia, the psyche's swing from one extreme to its opposite, from rigid self-denial to reckless indulgence, as the unconscious demands equilibrium. The addiction isn't the vice, it's the vice's veil, concealing the unloved self, screaming for embrace. Recall the archetype of Dionysus, the Greek god of wine and ecstasy, whom Jung saw as the shadow's patron, wild liberation masking profound grief. In one client's tale, a former athlete sidelined by injury, the nightcap beers weren't. Rebellion against boredom, they were balm for the broken identity he couldn't mourn. I thought I was unwinding, he said, but it was the boy who lost his dream, drinking to forget he ever had one. Jung would urge confrontation with the unconscious, not through vows of abstinence, alone, but ritual. Light a candle weekly, invite the shadow to speak. What do you guard? What do you fear I'll see? Write unfiltered, then burn the page, a symbolic surrender. Over time, the seduction wanes as the shadow, seen, loses its siren call. The bargain unravels not in conquest, but curiosity. What if I welcome the pain it numbs? One evening, that athlete sat sober, tears flowing for the first time. I grieved the kid I was, he whispered, and the addiction? It just quieted. If the shadow seduces you with false solace, break the pact, share one hidden fear in the comments, not for sympathy, but to voice it. Your first step from bargain to belonging. Number 3, the ego's exile, the forgotten self beneath. The third veiled truth is the ego's exile, the banishment of the self beneath addiction's rubble. Jung viewed the ego as the psyche's captain, vital but not sovereign, meant to navigate, not dictate. Addiction exiles the self, crowning the ego king of a hollow realm where every craving is a decree, every surrender a scepter. I need this. The ego insists, mistaking the substance for salvation, while the true self, the integrated whole of light and shadow, languishes in forgetfulness. Jung termed this inflation the ego's delusion of grandeur, blind to its own frailty. This exile festers in isolation's echo chamber. You hide the habit, ashamed, convincing yourself no one would understand. But Jung knew solitude breeds inflation. Unchecked, the ego swells, devouring the self's whispers. The addiction isn't rebellion, it's refuge, a fortress where the ego reigns supreme, unmolested by the self's call to vulnerability. In the archetypes and the collective unconscious, Jung warned that without the self's anchor, the ego becomes a tyrant, addiction its decree. Envision the myth of Icarus, wings of wax, soaring too near the sun, ego's hubris melting his flight. One client, a lawyer numbed by pills after courtroom triumphs, mirrored this. Ego exalted in verdicts, self-starved in silence. Winning cases fed me, she admitted, but losing myself starved the rest. Jung prescribed amplification, expanding the symbol. What does the pill wing for you? Sessions revealed it armored the unworthy child, afraid of parental disdain. Reclaiming the self meant exile's end weekly ego audits. List 3 ego-driven choices, for example, pilled to perform, counter with self-aligned acts, for example, journal fears. Slowly, the exile returned, the self, no longer banished, guided. The ego's exile ends not in dethroning, but delegation, Captain, not king. If addiction exiles yourself, reclaim it. Name one ego, lie in comments. I need this to succeed. Naming banishes exile. Number 4, the collective snare, the addiction of belonging. The 4th veiled truth is the collective snare, the addiction to belonging that addiction exploits. Jung saw the collective unconscious as humanity's shared psyche. Archetypes, instincts, the herd pull toward conformity. Addiction isn't solitary, it's symbiotic with the collective's whisper, fit in or fade. In a world of curated feeds and conditional praise, the habit becomes camouflage, dulling the self's divergence to blend with the throng. Jung termed this possession by the archetype, where the ego, fearing exclusion, yields to the group's shadow, numbing conformity masked as camaraderie. This snare tightens in belonging's paradox. We crave connection, yet fear its cost. Authenticity's exile for acceptance's illusion. Addiction feeds the feast. One more round buys belonging. But Jung knew the cost, the self-starvation in the communal trough. In the undiscovered self, he warned that modern progress devours individuality. Addiction, its symptom of soul loss. Contemplate the bacchanalia, Roman rites of excess, where communal revelry masked personal voids, archetypal belonging devolving to bondage. A client, a social media influencer, scrolled endlessly, connecting via likes while pills bridged real gaps. I feared alone, she confessed. Jung's remedy, active participation. Reclaim belonging through self-ritual. Weekly archetype audit, list collective pulls, for example, post for validation. Counter with solitary acts, for example, unplugged walk, no shares. The snare loosened, true bonds, raw, reciprocal, emerged. The collective snare breaks not in isolation, but intentional affiliation, belong to self first. If belonging snares you, confess one heard habit in comments, scroll for friends. Confession cuts the cord. Number 5, the alchemical fire, the transformation's forge. The 5th veiled truth is the alchemical fire, the forge where addiction transmutes from chain to catalyst. Jung, steeped in alchemy, saw addiction as the nigredo, dark putrefaction preceding gold. Not punishment, but purification. The fire that burns dross ego illusions, unintegrated shadows to reveal the self's ore. No tree becomes tall without roots reaching deep. Jung noted, addiction's blaze forces roots into fertile dark. This fire rages in surrender's crucible, not defeat but yielding to process. The ego screams fight, but Jung urged contemplation. Witness the burn without fleeing. In psychology and alchemy, he likened it to the philosopher's stone. Base metal addiction refined to philosopher's gold wholeness. A musician client's fire was heroine's haze, post-fame, acclaim's ash left self-charred. Jung-inspired confrontation, daily alchemical journal, log cravings as base elements. Counter with transmutation acts, for example, play unpolished riff. The forge heated, what burned wasn't talent, but addiction's grip. The fire hurt, she said, but it melted the chains. The alchemical fire tempers, not through escape, but embrace. What does this crave teach? If fire forges you, share one transmutation in comments, crave to create. Forge shared lightens load. The sixth veiled truth is the rebirth's dawn, the self's emergence from addiction's ashes. Jung termed this individuation's fruit, the self, psyche's mandala, arising when shadow, anima, and ego align. Addiction's night yields dawn, not absence of craving, but presence of purpose. The self is not purpose, Jung wrote in Aeon, it's the goal. Dawn breaks in ritual reclamation, daily self-alter, light a flame, affirm, I am vessel, not victim. One veteran, post-opioid exile, built his, flame for light reclaimed. Jung's active imagination animated, dialogue with addict self as ally, not adversary. What wisdom do you bear? Dawned integration, craving as cue for unmet needs. The self emerges not triumphant but tender, whole, not wholeless. If dawn dawns for you, declare one self-affirmation in comments, I am vessel. Dawn shared illuminates all. Number 7, the mandala's circle, the eternal return. The seventh veiled truth is the mandala's circle, the eternal return where addiction is lesson loops into life's mandala, Jung's symbol of wholeness, self's eternal orbit. Healing isn't linear, it's circular, relapse risks as rebirth cues. The psyche is circular, Jung noted in Mysterium Conjunctionis. Addiction's return tests mandala's hold. Circle closes in vigilant vigilance, mandala meditation, trace circle. Inscribe wholeness symbols, for example, craving as portal. A dancer client's loop, binge as boundary lesson. Eternal return, each cycle refines, self's orbit widens. Mandala's completion, addiction, once throne of shadow, evolves temple of self. The circle's center is everywhere, Jung said, wholeness, not endpoint. If circle calls, etch one eternal lesson in comments. Crave equals create, circle shared, wholeness multiplies. As you close this voyage, discern nothing in existence was arbitrary. Each compulsion, each collapse, each solitary stride was the cosmos murmuring, awaken. Affliction didn't arrive to chain you, it arrived to chisel you. Isolation didn't arrive to forsake you, it arrived to befriend you. And now, as the mandala completes, recall, addiction wasn't your adversary. It was your alchemist, transmuting leaden exile to golden emergence. You're not healed in absence of craving, but in presence of self, whole, orbiting eternally. If this roused your inner forge, share it, not for acclaim but alliance. And subscribe, for the circle continues. Your voyage, solitary yet shared, completes nothing, yet everything.